onto the duties previously handled by NTTA, I think, is a mistake, and that's been one of the things, again, to cause great concern and anxiety amongst locally elected officials.
One of the things that you mentioned in, that I noticed you filed a bill recently relating to a sales tax. Could you talk a little bit more about that and just give me an idea what you're proposing and what that would mean for North Texas?
Well, as you know, North Texas has a major congestion problem in terms of being able to address all of the cars and trucks that are on the road. And it's only going to get worse, in fact, substantially worse, just over the next decade alone. What the bill I filed would do is enable local communities to hold a local vote to determine whether or not they'd like to exempt from the current sales tax cap, which the state imposes, up to 1 penny to be used for transportation projects. If you're an area or a region currently in North Texas that does not use DART, for example, you could elect, if it was approved by a local vote of the people, you could elect to collect up to 1 penny and join DART. If, on the other hand, you're a city like Dallas, which already has DART, then, of course, you've taken care of your transportation needs. But because up to 1 penny would have been exempted, you could, again, elect to use that additional 1 penny in capacity for economic development purposes, as other cities currently do through what's referred to as the 4A and 4B sales tax. And so what we're trying to do is just give North Texas more options to be able to meet their transportation needs. Specifically, this option would be used to further rail and mass transit in North Texas.
The governor yesterday came out with that commission report that proposed a half-cent swap with the whole appraisal issue, and I know that's a very complicated issue the legislature is going to look at later. Is there any issues if you did a local sales tax option with what the governor has put forward, or is that? I
think in a practical sense, if either of those were to pass, it would foreclose the other. I don't think we'd be in a position to be able to offer the public both of those opportunities. And candidly, while I know that the reforms relative to property tax were just announced yesterday, I believe that one option that would allow for the usage of up to 1 penny in sales tax for property tax reduction is probably not an option that the legislature itself is going to consider an acceptable one to put before the public. Here in Austin, we absolutely recognize that property taxes are too high and that we have to do things responsibly to help control the increase in property taxes at the local level. But of the various options available to legislators, I do not believe the utilization of that sales tax will be for that particular purpose.
Is there, one of the things that I think is an important point that you made, and I want to give you a chance to emphasize a little more, when you're talking about changing how we do roads, you're not talking about abolishing all new toll roads. Am I correct about that?
You're absolutely correct. Toll roads are a good thing, not a bad thing. But like any good thing, you can have too much of a good thing. And I think the point that legislators are trying to make in Austin now, and this is a view that is widespread among legislators of both political parties, is that presently we are relying too heavily on toll roads into the future to meet Texas transportation needs. Virtually every major project on the board today is to be built in Texas as a toll road. That's simply irresponsible. The public has paid for a system of free transportation in this state. I say free. Nothing's free. They've paid for those roads through gasoline taxes that are paid into the state every time a person goes to the pump and fills their car. To pay those gasoline taxes and to continue to pay those taxes, which of course would continue to be the case, and to have to pay tolls for every major artery going forward in the state, at least those that are built new, I think is in essence double taxation, and I think it's an unfair burden on people across the state. Some new toll roads are a good thing, but they should be part of a total transportation mix of options, and that's why we're proposing other things like the indexing of the current gasoline tax. The current gasoline tax we have has not been raised since 1991. One of the things before the legislature this session will be whether or not to change the law so that gasoline tax at its current level can simply be increased at the rate of inflation going forward. I think that's a very reasonable compromise. Certainly the cost of construction, highway construction in particular, has increased dramatically since 1991. So to have not raised the fuel tax in all of that time is a bit irresponsible on the part of us here in Austin that are expected to look into the future to meet needs such as transportation. indexing the current fuel tax going forward, from this point forward, to match the rate of inflation, I think, is one very modest and yet responsible way to meet the roadway needs of the state. On an annual basis, this would amount to a little more than 1 penny per gallon of gasoline, and I think that's a very affordable option instead of what we're seeing now, which would be the proliferation of toll roads.
Is there anything else relating to transportation policy or road construction issues that you'd like to make your constituents aware of, or that you just like to put on the record or talk about?
On a local basis, I will tell you one of the issues I care very passionately about is that of the use of cameras for at stop signs. The use of red light cameras, as it's referred, I think is an issue that's becoming increasingly controversial. I am not an opponent of the use of red light cameras. What I am an opponent of is the use of them as a means for cities to profit for purposes of paying for other city budget needs. Cities receive now sales tax revenue and they receive property tax revenue. They should not be initiating yet another form of revenue, which is the hanging of red light cameras on practically every major intersection throughout the city. Cameras ought to be limited specifically to those areas that have a legitimate public safety concern. For those locations and for those reasons, I support cameras. But when they go beyond that as a revenue raiser, as is the case currently in the city of Dallas, surrounding cities, and the city of El Paso, all of which are either using or beginning to use red light camera technology, those cities are already placing substantial line items in their budget to account for the profit that they make off of these cameras. When the use of cameras goes towards profits as opposed to public safety, I think that's wrong. So one of the pieces of legislation I filed will either take those surplus monies, those profits if you would, after a city recovers its cost of buying the camera and maintaining the camera, and either using those profits to fund the state's trauma care fund, which is what deals with traffic accidents, or as an alternative, we need at the state level simply to lower the fine that's currently on the books of most cities and cap it on a statewide basis so that cities can indeed recover the cost of the cameras and the operation, but so that the profit motive is taken out. Once you take the profit motive out, I predict we'll see much less use of those cameras in our communities.